to hold the toes more.
So most of this lesson is lying on your stomach, on your belly, but start off on your back just to have a little scan and settle into yourself. So I know when everyone's back. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'll send him. Okay. So could you roll over onto your stomach if that's possible? And if lying on your stomach's not possible, you can do this against the wall. So roll onto your stomach. You can do it in your mind, but if you want to, you can actually do it with your arms and your chest resting on the wall in standing. You can choose whichever is going to be easiest for you. And could you arrange your arms in a particular way? So turn your head to the right, and could you bring your right arm out to the side and bent at the elbow, so your right hand is somewhere in front of your face. And could you bring your left arm behind you, so it's also bent at the elbow, but it's down near your hip and your palm is facing up. So one arm's up, one arm's down. You're facing towards the right. You can see your right hand and your left hand is behind you, and both elbows are bent at 90 degrees. So your elbows are at shoulder level, and there's a 90-degree bend at each elbow. So your two forearms are actually parallel to each other, but facing in opposite directions. Yep. And your right palm is down and your left palm is up. And that looks pretty good. You're here. We're going to do, most of the lesson is going to be in this position. So whatever you can do to be comfortable, you can adjust as you go. Yes, be on a mat rather than a carpet is probably a good idea. And just check, have a look behind you and see, is your elbow at 90 degrees or not? No. And look in front of you and see if that elbow is 90 degrees. Good. And fantastic. So your head is turned towards the right. And once your arms are in that position, can you just quite gently slide both your hands in the direction that they're facing, the direction of the fingertips. So your right arm slides up a little, your left slides down a little, and then return. So notice how you do that. Do it a few times and do it so lightly that it would be comfortable to do it a few times, that you're not going to exhaust yourself. And do it slowly enough that you can feel how much of yourself is involved. So you don't need to lift your elbows. Your elbows and your forearms are sliding on the floor and returning. And feel how you're breathing as you do that. And does anything happen in your chest? Do you sense movement in your collarbones, your shoulder blades? your neck, anywhere else. And then rest, but stay in that position. Having said that, if you need to have a break on your back or on your side or in any other position because you're getting uncomfortable or because your attention's not staying there, then just do that. So you're resting for a moment. So now with your hands in the same position and your head turned to the right, can you think how you would lift both arms simultaneously from the floor? So think it first. And think it first. Think it first. How quickly do you go to the action of that? And does that interfere with your ability to sense how you're doing that? So then start to very slowly lighten the weight of both arms at the same time. And it's this simultaneous action that we're after. So notice, is it simultaneous to lift and simultaneous to lower again to the floor? And can you lift your hand, your fingers, your wrist, your elbow at the same time and put them down at the same time? So how do you organise that coordination, the timing of both arms to do that? And how heavy do they feel? How easy is this? Another question, how high do you need to lift, to be lifting? Yeah, it could be a few millimetres, and you'll learn more from doing it small than from doing it big. Are you still breathing as you lift? So in that very first moment of lifting, where do you press into the floor? How much of you feels light and where do you feel heavy? Okay. So then can you pause for a moment and then can you come back to lifting just your right arm? So if you just think about your right arm, how's that? So when your right arm is lifting, where is your attention? Is it just on your arm? Or can you include more of yourself in your image of yourself as you do that action? So does your head get heavier or lighter here? As you lift your right arm, does your head press into the floor or does it feel a little lighter? And as you lower your right arm back to the floor, what changes in the pressure on the left side of your face? And what about in the front of your chest? You sense a shift of weight, of pressure at the front of you. Is your pelvis in your image or not? Do you have any sense of anything happening in your legs? And then let that go and just lift your left arm. So let your right arm rest there. So your left arm, your left elbow is at shoulder height. What's different about lifting your left arm? Is it easier or more difficult? Does it feel heavier or lighter? Are you more inclined to hold your breath or less inclined? How does your weight shift across your chest? And what happens in your head? Your pelvis, your legs. And then can you alternate? So lift your right arm and let it down, lift your left arm and let it down. What happens now? When you're alternating, does something happen a little more in your chest, in your head, anywhere else? You have a sense of which arm feels lighter. Okay. And then have a rest. Let it go. Rest wherever you would like to rest. You can stay on your belly, you can roll onto your back or your side. Just let go of that. Okay. And come back onto your stomach. Resting on the front of you with your arms in that orientation, your head turned to the right, your right hand palm down at the front and your left hand palm up behind you with both elbows at 90 degrees. Okay. And can you come back to lifting your right arm? And feel, does anything happen in your pelvis? Could you do something in your pelvis that would allow your right arm to lift a little more easily? So experiment a little bit. If you had a clock under your pelvis, would it make sense to roll your pelvis to the 3 or the 6 or the 9 or the 12? How could you recruit a bit of movement here So try rolling your pelvis a little towards the left as you lift your right arm. So you would get heavier on the left, the front of your left hip as you lift your right arm, and then let it go again. See if that makes it more or less easy, simple, light. And then try rolling your pelvis the other way. Roll your pelvis to the right. Which way is more helpful? And then continue to do whichever one seems to give you more assistance. Which way is it? Let that go and roll over onto your back. Which way did you roll onto your back? Can you remember? So roll onto your stomach again. And can you roll onto your back the other way? The other direction? And does it now make sense to you why you chose the first direction, or was the second direction easier? And then whichever way you like, roll onto your back again and have a rest. So whatever we do instinctively, automatically, habitually, there's usually a reason for that. Well, there's always a reason for that. Sometimes we ask ourselves the question of why or how. But most often we just do it. Okay, roll over onto your stomach again. How do you do that? And your arms in the same configuration, your head turned to the right. Right hand palm down in front of you. Left hand in a reverse. It's not a mirror image, it's like a complete flipped mirror image. That's it. So in that position, could you lift your head a little bit? And your head. So lift your head a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And lower it. And how do you organise that? What goes down into the floor and what lifts from the floor? Do you get heavier or lighter in your chest when you lift your head? Do you get heavier or lighter in your belly? And what happens in your right leg, your left leg? So a tiny movement of lifting your head, or even just lightening your head, not even lifting, but just making your head lighter on the floor, can involve your whole self. And if you allow your attention to include your whole self, it might make the action a little easier. So now could you lift your head and your right arm together? Just a little. So see what changes in your pattern of pressure on the floor. If you lift your head and your right arm, where does the weight shift across the front of your chest, of your belly? What happens in the other shoulder? And if you were to add to this lifting one leg. Which leg would you choose? So try both, not both together. Try one, then try the other. But make sure you're still breathing as you do this. And that each time you come down to land on the floor, you release all of the effort of lifting. That's it. And so when you've lifted your head and your right arm and your right leg a few times, and your head and your right arm and your left leg a few times, just rest in that position for a little longer to let everything settle. And then could you lift your head and your right arm again, but without lifting a leg? Could you just include your leg and your pelvis in your image of the movement? Right? So just allow your attention to include your legs and your pelvis. Having done the experiment of lifting each leg, and notice whether you can lift your head and your right arm now a little easier. Do you need to actually lift your leg in order to have the benefit, if you like, of recruiting more muscle to help you lift? And then let that go and roll onto your back if you would like to, and have another rest. And when you come to rest onto your back, you might observe your breathing, your contact with the floor, your sense of heaviness or lightness. Your sense of the space inside you and the space around you as well. So come onto your stomach again, resting onto the front of you, your arms in the same position as before, your head turned to the right. That's it. And slowly and softly, could you lift your head a little bit and turn it to the other side? Turn it to the left, but do it so slowly that you can feel what that movement involves through the rest of you, through your trunk, your shoulders, your pelvis. Slow and soft. Is that movement reversible? Could you change direction at any time? When your head comes to the left, to rest on the right side of your face and to look to the left, the next time just leave it there. And feel what you've adjusted to make that a comfortable possibility. Have you shifted the weight on your pelvis, on your chest? Did something change through your legs? Okay. And so in this position now, with your head turning to the left, could you lift your left arm? And see, what does this involve? So your arms are still in the same configuration they were at the start. So your left hand is somewhere down near your left hip. Well, but away from it. So your elbow's still 90 degrees. And your head stays looking to the left as you lift your left arm. And how do you manage to do this without interfering with your breathing and without struggling? And as you lift your arm, you're lifting your elbow and your hand and your fingers. And if it's not possible to do that, just make it lighter. You don't need to actually lift. We want the hand to come off the floor and the elbow. And as you do that, something shifts. Your weight shifts on the floor. And do you have a sense of something happening in your pelvis? And pause there. And then just softly slide your arms in the direction they're facing. So your left arm slides down a little, your right arm slides up a little, and see how it is to do it this way with your head turning to the left. What happens in your ribs and your collarbones? Yeah. So your head's still to the left and you're just sliding your arms in the opposite direction from each other. So that's it. Is this a movement that just includes your arms, or can you include all of you in that movement? Okay, and have a rest again, wherever you'd like. Okay, and back onto your stomach. Arms in the same position, head turned to the left. And so now you're going to do a little bit of experimenting. So come back to that movement of sliding your right hand a little up and your left hand a little down. And could you continue to slide your right hand up further and further until it comes close to your head, and then bring it down again. And then start to think that your right hand, as it slides up, can start to sweep around your head and actually underneath your head towards the other side of your chest. And so at some point there, your arm will need to make a turn to sweep around. And we're coming to the point where the palm of your left hand will come to your right armpit. Oh, right hand to left armpit. Yeah? So play with that idea. You don't have to come up with it straight away. So you're turning to the left, your right arm's up, your left arm's down, and see how that right arm could sweep up and around underneath your head over towards your left armpit. So what do you need to do to let that happen? So as you experiment with this, keep the quality of softness, of curiosity, of the beautiful word on the board, self-generated state of well-being, happiness, etc. So that your elbow continues to move the whole way, doesn't stop. And as your right arm sweeps up and around, there's a point that it turns so that your palm faces up as it comes under your head and bends around to reach towards your left armpit. Your head stays to the left the whole time. And then you reverse it back again. So lengthen your right arm up. Find the point as it sweeps around under your head to turn. And perhaps something needs to roll here, some part of you. Or perhaps something needs to lift, to let your hand come into that position and then reverse to go back to where you were. Try rolling a little to one side or the other side. What happens with your pelvis? So your right arm sweeps up and around under your head, finds a place to roll so that you can continue to bring your right hand towards your left armpit and then sweep it around again. And you don't have to get it perfectly, just see for you, how would you organise it? So you don't need to make it a full circle. So try now, if you bring your left hand to a standing position, yes, to like a push-up position. And then do the same thing with your right hand. Sweep it around and up. How could that left hand help to move your body? As we add that extra possibility, does that make it any easier, any more doable? So there's still a point up around the top somewhere as your arm sweeps around, where your palm turns from being palm down to palm up. Somewhere as it sweeps underneath your head, there's a turning. And then sweep around again back to the way you came. There's so many possibilities going on here, and that's fine. Do it in a way that feels comfortable for you, satisfying for you. You can move anything you like. And when you've had enough exploring, just roll onto your back again. And I'll know. Oh, everyone's had enough. Fair enough. So everybody have a rest. Have a rest. Okay, over onto your tummy again, if you're okay to do a bit more. Have your hands, your arms in the same position. This time turn your head back to the right again. So your right hand is up, your left hand is down, your elbows are in 90 degrees. And your head is looking towards the right again. And again, start to slide your right arm up and your left arm down. See if that's feeling any different from the start. Softly, lightly. And could you now think of the left hand doing something clever? So as your left hand slides down, could you direct it towards a space underneath you somehow so that it could come under your belly towards the other side of you? And then take it out again, so it doesn't need to go all the way through in a big circle, but just see how could you organise to take your left hand around, through, under your waist. What could you do in your trunk, in your pelvis? How would you make a space here to let that left hand come through? And then out again. So the constraint is only that your head stays turned to the right and that your right arm stays on the right side. But other than that, you can have a go at anything, as long as you know what it is that you're doing. Freestyle. So have a play. Have a play. How do you shift your weight enough to find a space to let that left hand come through To reduce the friction so that your hand, your arm can slide in this direction. And then let it go. Roll onto your back again. And see how you feel on your back. What do you notice here? Maybe relief, maybe calm, maybe something about your breathing or your trunk or your connection from one bit to another bit to another bit. So as you're on your back here now, can you bring your right arm across your across your chest so that it heads towards your left armpit? And bring your left arm over the top of that so that your arms are crossed in front of your chest with your elbows in the middle somewhere. So that and then start to lengthen alternately each hand towards the floor. So think about how we set this up. Your right hand is under your left armpit, and your left hand goes across that. So it's like giving yourself a big hug across with your elbows quite close together. And then lengthen your right hand towards the floor and feel how that rolls you a little bit. And then can you lengthen your left hand towards the floor so that you roll a little bit that way. So how can you find a way for your hands to extend a little further in each direction without struggling, without feeling like you're in a straitjacket? So how much of you can move in this kind of weird position? Is it just a movement of your arms? And if you lock your hands up, you won't be able to do it. So that hand goes there. Doesn't need to be big. And this hand here. So actually, a couple of people have figured out or have decided to try having legs bent up and feet standing. So try that. See what happens. So bend your knees up and have your feet standing and see if that becomes easier. So your hands are free, your arms are free to slide. So that's it. So that as you reach along with each arm, you'll feel your weight shifting across the back of you towards your next door neighbour. Your hand extends towards your next door neighbour. I suppose your weight does too, but do it softly. That's it, lightly. It's not a question of how far you can reach, but how softly. Your hands can be soft. Don't tighten in your wrists. Just think that your fingers are reaching towards the floor and then along the floor. And if you can do that with your legs bent up, can you let your legs down again, long, and see if that has enabled you to just feel for the floor. Has enabled you to move more freely in the top of you. Do you know, has something changed in your ability to include your pelvis and your legs in this movement without pressing into the floor, but just by rolling across the floor. And let it go. A very nice thing to do, to give yourself a hug and a little roll all at the same time. So rest there for a moment, on your back, with your arms wherever you want your arms to be. And then one last time, could you roll onto your stomach with your head turned to the right and your arms in that angled position? Right hand up, left hand down, right angles at your elbows and your shoulders. And just see what it's like now to slide one hand up and the other hand down, your right hand up and your left hand down, I should say. Does that feel like it's a more inclusive movement? Or does it feel easier or freer? And then just a couple of times lift both arms simultaneously and see if that has become an easier action. So lifting the weight of your arms from the floor, do you sense that differently? And then lift one arm, lift the other arm, just to check how that's going. And then let it all go. Rest wherever you want to rest in preparation for coming up. Where do you get that last little rest before you leave the little cocoon here and head out? And then when you're ready, come up to standing and see what has all of that done to your organisation. So maybe you want to stay here for the night, that's okay. And when you're up on your feet, what do you notice? Where does your attention go? When we're away from the floor, and if you open your eyes, where are they looking? And then you could start to walk. Or you could just stay there.